Hello everyone, it's me Clayton. I just finished watching Guillermo Del Toro's Pinocchio, starring Gregory Mann, Ewan McGregor, Tilda Swinton, Kate Blanchett, and Christoph Waltz, among others. Now, it's weird that this year has three different Pinocchio movies that vary wildly in quality. One being a completely soulless Disney live action remake, another being a bizarre film that happens to star Pauly Shore as Pinocchio, and this one, which happens to be the only good one out of the three. But with that aside, let's get to the story, shall we? This version of Pinocchio stars Geppetto, played by David Bradley, who ends up losing his son Carlo, played by Gregory Mann, who ends up dying inside of a church when a bomb happens to blow up, because this is happening during World War One. Geppetto is, as you'd expect, completely devastated by the loss of his boy. So, a wood sprite spirit, voiced by Tilda Swinton, decides to bring a puppet that he creates to life so that he can fill the hole in his heart that Carlo left behind. The only problem is that Pinocchio, being a new living organism, has no idea how anything in the real world works, so the wood sprite decides to have a talking cricket, played by Ewan McGregor, act as his conscience. And in this version, instead of ending up working for Stromboli, he ends up working for a man named Count Volpe, played by Christoph Waltz. He ends up going to a military academy instead of Pleasure Island, but it still also ends with a giant whale, that, as you'd expect from the fairy tale, only it's not named Monstro in this version. So, yeah, this happens to basically feel like a reinvention of Pinocchio, but in a way that doesn't feel like it's unintentionally dating itself. Unlike the stupid modern jokes that were in the Disney live action Pinocchio, this one does feel more timeless, especially because it's set in a very particular date and time, during the events of World War One, and the darkness of the story definitely fits that specific time period. But despite the fact that it has a darker tone, it has more adult content in it when it comes to the violence and when it comes to the overall presentation of the piece, that doesn't mean it isn't still a fairy tale, and it doesn't mean it still can't have some comedy. It thankfully does have that, and the voice actor for Pinocchio really does a good job making him appear the most whimsical and the most childlike out of all of the versions of Pinocchio I've seen this year. He feels genuine in the role, and it's hard not to like him because of that. And you could say the same for Ewan McGregor as the cricket. I've always loved Ewan McGregor's voice, and it works really well here when he's allowed to narrate, and when he's allowed to basically be in pain for most of the film, but you can clearly tell he's trying his best for what he believes in. In that respect, he's still likable even while he's not perfect. And you could say the same for Geppetto as well, especially since he's played by the actor who played Filch from the Harry Potter movies, so I'm sort of used to him playing old men with a chip on their shoulder that you still can't help but like, but his version of Geppetto also feels very different from the original source material, but still believable as Geppetto in this specific version. On top of that, the stop-motion animation that's used to bring all this to life is absolutely gorgeous. This is also co-directed by the same guy who did the animation for Fantastic Mr. Fox, and you can definitely tell when it comes to the designs and when it comes to the detail in the movements and in the environments. It all just feels very handcrafted, and it really does make the whole film look a lot more gorgeous than anything that you could find in a CG animated film, or even in some of the hand-drawn stuff. Stop motion is a very difficult process to get right, but when it does, it is a thing of beauty, and this definitely shows that the whole way through. That's not to say that this movie is perfect, and if I had to nitpick a little bit, I would say that some parts of the plot do feel a little disjointed and uneven, but even then, I'd take this film 10 times over the Pinocchio movies we got previously this year. So I definitely think it's still a really good time for adults, and honestly, for kids could get into it too if they happen to like films that treat their audience with respect. And honestly, I do think kids' films are definitely missing that little bit of charm that of these films that aren't scared to be dark, but are still able to get across good messages. So that's what I'm going to give Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio a 9 out of 10. Guillermo del Toro's been kind of on a roll this year, hasn't he? See you next time.